where it's 2 o'clock. Now it's 2:01, so I'm calling the meeting to order. This is the first meeting of the P3, what we're calling internally P3, what we are calling otherwise Public Awareness Personnel and Policy Committee. Thank you everyone for coming. And the agenda has been posted, but as I mentioned in communications, there was some miscommunication about the way that things were written in the agenda. So the way that the meeting will work is that we've got some objectives. Those are items 1, 2, 3. Those are kind of the overview of what I want to accomplish in this meeting. I'm going to be doing a lot of listening, and then we will brainstorm each category. This is a committee with a very broad mandate. So what we want to think about is how do we tackle all of the things that we can do in a reasonable amount of time in bite-sized chunks. So items 1, 2, and 3 are more objectives. They're not areas for discussion per se individually. So I'd like to start with public awareness, item number 4, and I'm going to turn that over to General Manager Pruitt and other personnel that want to chime in. And I'd like to find out what the past scope of this aspect has been and the projects that have been ongoing so that we can make a decision if we want to pursue those projects and understand what the scope is so we can figure out if we want to reduce it or expand it. And that's the way that we'll approach each of these 3 categories during this meeting.
Okay, thank you. If I could maybe make a general introductory comment about committees as a whole. So the committees, the board just felt they were a good way for things to be worked on by a smaller subcommittee, a smaller group of the board, to make it more flexible and easier to have conversations. So they are an advisory group. So typically the committees don't make decisions. They don't direct staff on bigger initiatives. They work with staff to try to figure out what may make sense for the committee to work on. And then oftentimes we'll take the committee recommendations to the board to see if the board as a whole thinks that's a good direction to go. So just wanted to get that out there. You all know which committees you're on. That was done at the second meeting in December. So we have two board members per committee. So regarding the, I guess we're going to start with the public awareness. You know, I've been here about 4 years and we haven't met as a PAP or a P3 committee very frequently. I'm going to maybe I'll take a second to make a few brief introductions by group. So we have 3 members of our public awareness group with us. So, you know, Chris Robbins, I think you may have met. Chris, why don't you wave your hand there? So Chris leads the group, and he has 2 people that work for him. He has Lisa Urabi, and Lisa, if you can turn your camera on real quick, and Alicia Yerman. So the 3 of those comprise our kind of public awareness group, and there's Alicia. So I think it's good to put a face to the names. So these 3 people, very creative, very good at what they do, and they really help us get the message out. But as I mentioned, we haven't relied heavily on the PAP committee to steer the direction of this group. We will from time to time bring issues forward to them. But more often than not, the board as a whole hears about the results of the public awareness aspect. Chris puts out a regular email kind of update as to what's going on, what actions we've taken. So maybe I can turn the microphone over to Chris real quickly. And Chris, you can tell the committee kind of the scope of what we have done, what you do in general, and then how we've utilized the committee to further the aims of your group.
Certainly, thanks, General Manager Pruitt. So the outreach portion and the public information portion of our work group, staff also perform water conservation activities. One of the big ones is our Water Academy. I think hopefully both directors have heard about it. I don't know if either of you had a chance to attend it. I don't particularly think so, but we typically would do that once per year in the fall, trying to get it at a good weather time. It can be really hot in the summertime, and it can even be hot in the spring and the fall, and it can also be rainy in the wintertime. So we've kind of, targeted it for October over the past several years. and had good success with the weather on those events. But I can explain that further if you so desire. One of the things we tried to add in that's similar to the Water Academy was more of a half-day event, trying to put it on a weekend. We called it an open house, chance for customers to come visit us without the full commitment of a full day, half-day event at the district's offices. And the reality was, I'm fairly certain I did report back to either the board or the committee that it didn't really pencil out. Just almost cannibalizing the customers that would attend the Water Academy by having them come to the open house instead. Some of the other outreach activities that we handle are Speakers Bureau. That's where myself or one of our subject matter experts, James is here on the meeting sometimes, depending on what topic the group wants to hear about. We will go out and give speaking engagements to specific groups. Quite often, one of the good sources is out at Lake San Marcos. A lot of interest there. But when we were in drought, everybody wanted a speaker about drought. And when desal came online, everybody wanted a speaker about desal. But once those two items fade off a little bit, it's much harder to get attendance and a presence at speakers groups. We also do booths and street fairs, typically the ones in the fall and spring at the, it's put on by the Chamber of Commerce. It's a really good event. We hand out typically succulents at those events, have a lot of interaction with customers. Oftentimes board members would attend those as a chance to reach out and talk with customers. Really enjoyable events, but again, the hiatus from those from COVID-19. We also have some partner events, I would describe them as, where we are partnering with possibly like the city for their State of the City address. Lisa Urabe, who I pointed out, or Glenn pointed out previously, making centerpieces that are provided by us. So almost more of a partnership where we partner with a local entity or agency, sometimes the fire department, where it's really somebody else's event, but we partner up on it and help them out. Chick-fil-A, whoever it is. One of the other things we do from time to time are landscape workshops. And some of the good news I can point out is, again, is Lisa Urabe just recently passed her Master Gardener certificate. That's through the UCSD extension. So we actually have a Master Gardener on staff. And then we have quite a few school education programs, both on-site tours, but also us going out to the specific schools from time to time to talk about jobs in the water industry and or water conservation type topics. And that's kind of the breadth of the type of items that we work on. As far as the board itself, a lot of times they'll want to, or the PAP committee would want us to give them an update on these, of various costs for the various programs. Additionally, certain items would come to the PAP committee for review before going to the board. Recently, as I can recall, we have a different water rate for ag customers. There's one that's put forth by the county or the county water authority, and one that's really the district's water rate. And sometimes had questions by customers about trying to get into that program that needed board resolution, that type of thing.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about the video series that you do, the work we do stuff?
Certainly. So one of the things that's been an ongoing change since coming here is the development of our Work We Do program. It's online videos that Alicia really creates. Alicia has really grown into kind of a master of being able to take a topic, a story, a work site, a project, a specific department, and turn it into a story to show to customers. And really with the advent of the internet and Facebook and social media, so much more of a way to communicate with our customers using video rather than threefold brochures. That just doesn't have much of a place anymore. And some of the awards that I'm going to be telling you about in a couple of days are related to efforts that Alicia put together to get us awards. I've found that when we submit for awards, if we're able to pack a video in there with it, it really makes it much better than just a 3-page write-up. That Alicia's videos add a real extra punch to what we're trying to do. And part of the work we do videos also is a chance for customers to get an inside look at what sort of tasks the district does. And they're very varied. There's water, there's sewer, there's finance, there's engineering. There's a lot of different things we do. And it's our effort to show customers in a tight little package what it is we try to do here at the district.
Thanks, Chris. Director Boyd Hodgson, you had maybe a month or so ago passed along a virtual tour that you had seen online of, I believe it was a treatment plant up in the LA area. And that was a nice virtual tour. And that's the type of thing we want to start moving towards, find a way to tell our story, whether it's the work we do or the facilities we have, to the public that may not want to come to a meeting on Wednesday night or may not want to take a full day to go do the Water Academy, but is interested about the district in general, or maybe about a specific aspect of what the district does. So any ideas like that that you are aware of or want to talk about, I think this meeting would be a good forum for that.
Absolutely. And first, congratulations, Lisa, on passing your Master Gardener exam. That's quite an accomplishment. Way to go. And I'm looking forward to hearing about the awards. It sounds like you'll be receiving. That's great news. I love all these ideas, and I've really noticed the outreach sort of ramping up. And I'm not sure what exactly was done in the past and the frequency of meeting, but it's my intention that I will be very involved with this, and we will meet frequently because I want to hear the updates. I want to provide ideas. I have a lot of ideas, and it's my hope that you'll be open to them and that we can elevate the public awareness even further. And I think that that's something that I bring to the table. That's why I was selected for this committee. So we will be meeting frequently, more frequently than has been done in the past. You'll see, more ideas coming maybe from a board member than what was done in the past. And my vision is that, that you'll continue down the excellent course that you've started. I don't want to direct, I don't want to get my hands in the pie, but I do have a lot of ideas. I'd like to bounce them off of you. And I hope that we can create a dialogue where we go back and forth and you say, we just don't have the staff for that. Or you say, great, we've been trying to do that and we needed board approval. So great, let's talk about it at the next board meeting. So that's kind of my vision for the way that the public awareness and publicity will go. Vallecitos has a lot of room for education in the customer base. I found that out when I was running for this office. There's a lot of room for education. There's a lot of room to showcase the wonderful things, the programming, the outreach that you all are doing. And it's just a question of maybe figuring out a marketing plan to do that. And we can work together on that, and I'm looking forward to it. Director Pennock, did you want to say anything about those efforts, or maybe you have some ideas as well? Is he muted? Maybe
he's muted. He also was at another.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm good.
Okay.
All righty. So, I do have some ideas. My first instinct is I'm just going to do a lot of listening, not really coming in to make any changes or anything like that. I just want to listen to see what's working, what's not working, and how we can facilitate and make things better. But as far as ideas right now, I just want to mainly listen, and just see again. You guys are the pros. I'm coming in this thing new. So again, I'd like to just listen, see what's working for you guys, what's not, and then facilitate some better things.
Are there areas that you feel are working really well, or areas that you feel like you need more board support to get them going, or to get them, things that you'd like to branch into? What would you like to do in an ideal world? What directions would you like to go?
Well, the Water Academy is a really really special event, and the effort that goes into it. Trust me, there's a lot of effort between myself and my staff, but I also have to give appropriate accolades to the staff that also work that event with us. We have staff from collections, staff from water operations, staff from engineering that really help out with it. And like, you get done at the end of that day and it's just such a fabulous day. You're exhausted because you've been on your feet and you're on the whole time, even when you're eating with the customers and you're still answering their questions and so forth. But there's almost this euphoria, from the end of it, that you accomplished this thing, and getting the feedback forms from the customers and just looking through all the positive comments that you've really been able to show people what it is that we really do. It's a fabulous event. The tricky part is getting people to attend, and I know to give up a whole day, that's a difficult thing. I don't think I would give up one of my days to go see my water district's event. I just don't have the time for it. And so one of the things I've thought about from time to time is, almost coming up with a virtual event where it's essentially the equivalent of the tour, but just maybe a series of videos, and we could have, some sort of methodology to, let the customer prove to us that they watched all the videos, and then we typically feed the customers at the Water Academy, but we could send them, lunch to a specific place on their own after they completed the event or whatever. So that's one of the things that I've it's been in my mind. I know it's been in other people's minds, to almost have like a virtual Water Academy, and then the appropriate ways to market that to the customers, and then also, what sort of reward would the customer get for participating in that.
Yeah, and if I can tag onto that, I agree with Chris. It's an amazing event, and the comments that we get afterwards are always so positive. Our challenge is we have a very limited demographic. We make it available to everybody, but when you look at the demographics of the people that actually attend, it's very narrow on the demographics. It tends to be an older group. They're typically retired, probably lived in the area for a while. So it's really hard to hit the younger generation and the working folks. They aren't represented in great numbers. So if the committee members have ideas on how to tap into those areas, my goal, and I've told this to Chris, I'd love if we can send everybody in the district service area through the Water Academy to raise their level of awareness of what we do and the challenges we face. I think is really eye-opening for a lot of people. But yeah, people aren't willing to give up 8 hours of their day, whether it's a weekday or a weekend. So I think that's something that the committee can help us with.
What are the actual numbers of those that have attended? I mean, in true numbers.
Well, per year, per session, you mean?
Yeah, average, yeah.
Yeah, we
Exactly.
typically shoot for like 50 to 60, Chris.
Yeah, typically we get a pretty good sized bus, and it'll hold about 55 people max. And we have the ability to drive additional customers in different vehicles in a pinch. But 50 is what we're looking to get.
And do you get that? You fill the bus?
Almost. Several years ago, yeah, we had overflow and needed to have additional vehicles, but the bus is typically full, and you never have this feeling of, boy, there's not enough people on this bus. What a waste of time. There's always enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Good.
and the flip side of that is we haven't had to turn a lot of people away. We haven't said, hey, there's so much demand and we only have one bus. That would be a nice problem to have. And if we started to have that problem, then we would either consider having a second bus on the same day, or doing the event twice a year or 3 times a year, or whatever the demand dictated. But it seems like the demand is pretty consistently in that one bus worth of people. So if we can drive that number up, that'd be great. Because Chris mentioned a lot of the work, a lot of the stuff that people don't even think about is operations crews are out there for weeks before the event, getting the facilities to a state that we can accept visitors, right? Every time you invite people to your house, you clean up before. So we're doing the same thing. So if we had 4 buses go through, it's really no more work for us to do. We're cleaning up once. So that would be okay. And the extra cost of another bus and some lunches really isn't that much. So I'd rather keep it to a 1 day a year event with more people at that event. But if we thought it was better to have multiple times per year, that's okay as well.
Does it have to be 8 hours? Can it be shortened?
We talked about this. So the way it's really broken down, it's basically 2 half days. You know, in the morning you come in and you're sitting in the boardroom and they're hearing from myself and the board members and some of the other staff members. And then the latter half of the morning, we'll go out and we'll visit. There's 3 kind of stations that we put together. They learn about water operations. They learn about how the wastewater collections crew works, and they see our conservation garden. And that takes us up to lunch. And then we feed them. And then right after lunch, we're putting people on the bus. And the whole afternoon is driving around the district, primarily visiting 2 sites. It's the Twin Oaks Reservoirs and the Meadowlark Reclamation Facility. But on the way, we may point out other reservoirs and things like that. So, you know, directly to the question, we could eliminate one half or the other. We can make it just a tour or just the speaking portion. It would be hard to do all of it in a half day. The district service area is too big to effectively see a significant portion of it in like 2 hours. So you probably need if you're going to get on a bus, we should make it a half day event on the bus.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about that section? That was really helpful information. And it sounds like there are so many programs that are ongoing that are really spectacular. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about them and continuing the discussion. Any other questions or any other comments about that? About public awareness? If not, we'll move on. I'm also a fan of trying to keep meetings going and efficient. So if I'm ever in a meeting that's more than an hour and a half, I get a little twitchy. So I would like to try to make this at least an hour to an hour and a half, no more than an hour and a half. So, okay,
if I can just add one more thing, out of respect to Chris, Lisa's and Alicia's time, would it be okay if they excuse themselves from the rest?
Of course.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming. Thank you all for joining.
So nice to meet you guys. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like policy's up next. So I'll hand it over to General Manager Pruitt. Give a little bit of context and background.
Yeah, so there's not a lot that's been done from a policy perspective with the PAP or P3 committee. There have been policy issues that have been handled by committees, but they tend to be handled by other committees. The most common one would be the Finance Committee. So for example, if we wanted to talk about our reserve policy, what should our policy be for how much reserves we have on hand? It wouldn't make sense to address that in the policy committee because it's really a financial related thing. So my experience has been that most of the items have found a home either at the board level or in another committee and haven't really been dealt with here. That doesn't mean there isn't room to expand that function. One thing that I've been working with Diane a little bit on is like an administrative code, an admin manual, which would contain policies and ordinances and things like that. So that may be something that the P3 committee could help us, if they're interested, to talk about that, where we're at, where we need to go, what should be in it, what's the role of the committee versus the role of the board. But hasn't been much effort involved in that. And there's really nobody I would point to in terms, as far as who's at the meeting today, other than myself and Diane, who handle kind of those policy related issues. So not much more to say on that item.
Okay, so I have a different idea about that.
That's it.
Because, I'm not that interested in what's been done in the past if nothing has been done. So what I would like to propose and what I would like to implement is we do need a policy manual as a board. I asked for that. That's one of the first things I asked for, and I understand that it's sort of in flux right now. And we need to regularly review policies. That's something that other boards typically do on a regular basis. And but to review the policies, we need to coagulate all the policies together, and they need to be accessible to anybody that wants them. And so my vision is to be able to access that, consolidate all the policies, and maybe we need to draft a timeline for that to happen. And I'm happy to help in any way that you need, so that we can access those. I would not like for 6 months of this first part of my tenure to go by on this committee and not have access to those policies. I think it's really important. When I was on the school board, we were finding policies that were drafted in 1988. And that's too long. That is too long for policies not to be, at least somebody lay their eyes on them and review them and update them if possible. So that is work that I can foresee being undertaken here. And if it is something that needs to be brought to the full board, then that is the case. Then we can certainly do that. But I think, the role of policy committees in other places is to be kind of the barrier and the first pass, to set, to sort of be a filter for what makes it to the full board for discussion. So that is something that I would like to see done sooner rather than later. I also, I think that's a very reasonable ask, and it's a lot of work, and it's tedious, and it's a slog, but it's important work. It's important work for the board to embark on that. And if we need to bring in other people, maybe we bring in people from the public. I mean, people on the public can sit on these committees too. So if we want to bring in, an expert in policy, or if we want to bring in, people that just want to be involved, we can do that too if it's a staffing issue and we don't want to pay other people to, to be part of that.
Yeah, and I would suggest it may be a bit broader than just the word policy, because we have ordinances, we have resolutions, we have all of those things that kind of we loosely talk about as being our guidance and our policies, but
Yes.
some are actually called policies, but there's things that are called other things, but they're in the same vein, I think. So
Yeah.
and I think that's what you're referring to, just a kind
It
of a
is.
broader assemblage of all these guiding documents.
It is. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, do you have it's like a handbook? A lot of people just like a handbook of instructions, or
Yes,
entail a lot of that stuff.
we've got procedure manuals, we've got personnel rules, we've got these things all over the place. We've got our ordinances cataloged and they're available online, but they're separate from the resolutions that are separate from these standalone policies, and engineering has their own set of rules. So we have to find a way to, at least, I think like Director Boyd Hodgson said, let's throw it all on the table, get our arms around it, and then try to figure out what to do with it. And we've talked about the public accessibility of all this. It should be easy for the public to look through our ordinances. Same thing with the resolutions and policies. Some of them are very easy, some of them are not. So I think standardizing, how they're named and where they're located and how to access them, those are, I think, things that would be important at the very front end, so that as we start to collect them, we know which pocket to put them in.
Yeah, and I think there might be an opportunity to do that digitally and make sure that it's maybe consolidated part on the website. Whatever makes sense. But to your point, making it easy for people to access, not only the public, but also us as board members. I don't know that the board needs to. So I'm thinking about policies governing sort of the board and how we make decisions. I don't know that all of the, policies governing how to clean engineering equipment or something like that necessarily, those are less of a priority for me as a board member. Of course, I'm going to trust that that's being done. But a policy manual on board governance is essential, and it's something that should be a priority for this committee, I think. But first we have to pull it all together and see where we are and make it accessible.
Yeah. So just again, I know you're just giving examples, but how the business of the board operates, that's really covered under one of our ordinances. So it's not a policy, but it's
Okay.
ordinance 203, business of the board. And it talks about a variety of things, how to get per diem reimbursement, about travel, how you name people to committees. It's a smorgasbord of things in that one ordinance, which may or may not be the best way to do things. We may want to have individual policies or ordinances for each of those topics within the current one we have.
Sure. Okay. Director Pennick, do you have anything to add about that, or any ideas that you might have about this segment of the task that we have?
No.
You must be driving through a dead zone.
Yeah.
Policies as an insurance guy, so it, use that.
Director Pennick, if you maybe once you get past the where you're driving, if you want to chime in, just feel free to chime in and reiterate. If you can hear us, reiterate what you were just saying. It wasn't coming through very clearly.
Can you not hear me?
No.
We didn't hear anything you said.
Okay, 2 minutes away from where my destination. So, all right, I'm 2 minutes away. I'll chime in 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe I can do some filler material, Director Boyd Hodgson. So one of the things that Diane and I had done, we'd started to try to identify a good model ordinance or a procedures manual or admin manual. So we identified one from a local water district, and we've kind of been using that. That's going to be, we're not just going to copy it, but we're going to use that as a guideline to say, hey, we looked through it and we said, hey, that seems reasonable how they did that. And then we're trying to pair up things that we have that would fit their structure. So we look through their structure and we say, hey, we have that, but it's a policy. We have that, it's an ordinance. We have that, it's a resolution. So we're kind of doing, I'll call it a mapping from what we already have to this structure. And by virtue of doing that, we're finding out where we have holes, or we may have things that the model that we use don't have. So we're trying to learn through somebody else's efforts to accelerate the process. And we started this right about when COVID broke out. So it's really been kind of put on the back burner. But I mean, at least strategizing and putting the plan in place is a good thing, so that when we can get back together and do all this work more effectively, we have better direction to go.
That sounds like a great way to approach it. I mean, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to, right?
Yeah.
So what do you need in order to keep that work going? And if you had somebody that could work on it a few hours a week, for example, how long do you think that would take?
Yeah, my guess is it's about a 6-month effort to get a rudimentary kind of basic document. And I think it would be actually pretty good. And as you know, these things are living documents. Every year you either come up with new ones or delete old ones or modify what you have. So it's never done. But I think you can get to a point where you're ready to kind of go live with it. And that's kind of our call it our admin code, for a lack of a better term. But I think 6 months is probably reasonable. What may be helpful is maybe at the next P3 committee, we can maybe sit down with you and explain which agency we use, kind of their format. We'll give you we won't go item by item, but we could say in general, here's the documents groupings that we have that are usually assembled under one admin code somewhere else. And then we would have to identify, I'd have to work with Diane to identify what other resources we would need. And then we could probably put together a better timeline.
Is it digitized right now, or is it on paper?
Yes, it's all these things. We have old documents that we're knocking dust off. We have to scan things, retype some things.
Oh boy.
It's all digital already. So yeah. It's a hodgepodge. We were formed back in whatever the mid-50s. So we've got documents that go back to that era. Maybe all of those have been superseded. I'm not sure. But that's part of the process we'd have to look through.
Okay, understood. Well, I think that's an admirable goal for to say 6 months tentatively now, but once you sort of get your arms around it a little bit more, then we can revise that. But I don't know if I'm going to be chair on this committee for the next time. But I would like to get that done while I am on this committee, and I would like to begin the process of reviewing the policies while I am on this committee, and try to make as much progress as possible going in that direction. And I know I don't like making work for people, so if there's a way that it could be done by someone that it falls within their their job description and their bailiwick and they're not that busy, that might be a solution too.
Yeah, so so I've mentioned Diane, and I think you've met and talked with Diane before, but Diane also has an assistant. It's Ann Johnson.
Yep.
So between Ann and Diane, they would be the ones I'd be looking to actually, do the heavy lifting.
Okay.
So it's not just Diane by herself.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, it's a tall order. It sounds like it's a very tall order, but I think it's an important one and one that we can get done and we can feel proud that we got it done and have something to show for it.
Right.
Director Pinnock, it looks like you're home.
I am so sorry. I truly apologize. That donation went longer. They wanted more blood and platelets and plasma than I thought.
Yeah.
Good for you though, for giving. That's really important.
Oh, no problem. Sorry. I truly apologize.
Anything that you'd like to add about policy, any ideas that you might have? And, this isn't going to be the only opportunity to share your ideas.
Okay.
I want to have lots of opportunities to share ideas, but I don't want to skip over if you have something that you'd like to add.
No, well, just my only 2 cents. I mean, I deal with policies every day. I'm an insurance guy, so I write policies every day. And, there's a lot of time and effort spent on them and nobody reads them, to be honest. So my concern is just spending so much. And yes, it's something that needs to be done. You truly do. I mean, of course, but I don't know if it would be a priority. I know it needs to be something, but when you say it's going to take a lot of man hours and time, that means time, which means money on something that, is not going to be used very much. My only concern is that the best use of time and efforts and resources to, like you said not reinvent the wheel, but yeah, maybe just tweak or go through something and fine tune it. Yes, but I don't know. It's just policies are boring. They really are.
They are. But I will say this,
necessary evils. Yes.
We need a baseline. We have as a governmental organization, or and as an organization, we need a baseline. And I think right now figuring out where the holes are is really important because we may have most of the baseline already in place. We just need to know it and consolidate it. And it is the case that when you don't have policy, sometimes you have people making stuff up as they go along, and then those rules get applied differently to different people. And then you have, lack of transparency, you have lack of accountability, and you have people really angry that vote for you. So I think it's important. I think we can strike a balance. I know Diane's really busy, and I'm sure Ann is too. But I think that, having a baseline and having something to work off of, so that if somebody requests it, we can say, here's where everything is, and just point them to the website or something like that.
Agreed.
I think one word that we haven't said is practices. Sometimes we have these practices, and these are these kind of informal things that have been passed down from generation to generation. This is how we do things, but they've never been codified or put into a policy. And it may be helpful. And I would have to draw from way beyond Diane and Ann to talk to all the staff and say, what are these practices? Why did it become a practice? And should we make this a policy? Because you're right, Director Boyd Hodgson, it's a lot easier if a member of the public asks the question, why did you treat me that way? Or why did this issue get resolved that way? It's a lot easier to say, well, here's our policy. Here's how we handle it. Instead of, well, we handled this case different than that case. And I mean, there always needs to be judgment in everything we do, but it would be good to have a general policy instead of just informal practices in some cases.
Agreed. And I apologize, I'm turning my back. I'm writing.
We see
writing
it.
on a whiteboard behind me so
Yeah.
that I can take notes. Okay, any other comments about the policy aspect? Okay, we're making progress. This is great. We're only 40 minutes in and we're almost done. That's great. Okay, so now let's look at personnel. And I'll turn it over to you, Director or General Manager Pruitt, to just give some background.
Okay, so first for personnel, we'll have a general conversation, but we actually do have an item we want to run by the committee. And it's an item that will be going to the board at next Wednesday's meeting. So let's do that one first, if you don't mind. I think you all know James Gumpel. He's joined us here. He's our district engineer. and he has a personnel issue that requires board approval. But this is the type of thing that we would typically run by the committee, just to see if the committee has any thoughts to help us refine the item before we bring it in front of the whole board. So with that, I'll turn it over to James.
Yes, thank you, General Manager Broom. Director Boyd Hodgins, the Director Panic, James Gumpel, I'm the Director of Engineering. So I have a fairly small group. It's about 16 employees. And within that group,
6 or 16?
16.
Okay.
And within that group, we have, let's see, 11 people retiring, or sorry, 9 people retiring and 2 people have left. So in a 3-year period. So I have a lot of changeover, mainly from retirement, which is a great thing. Matter of fact, I've been here for 15 years, and my first employee to actually leave the district or leave my department for another agency happened about 1.5 years ago. And then just last month, or just a few weeks ago, I had my second employee leave, and they both left for promotions. And one is now the district Otay Water District, and the other one's a manager at Vista Irrigation District. So then I understood and I supported them on those leaves. The rest of my employees are retiring. So we had a lead position in our development group called the Development Services Coordinator. Her name was Eileen Kuntz, and she retired, and her last day was at the end of November. Unfortunately, about a month later, I had the supervisor in the same group accept another job at VID as a manager. So that group now is 2 people short. And unfortunately, it's the 2 lead positions, the supervisor and the lead. So with that, we saw an opportunity to maybe bring Eileen Kuntz, who was the Development Services Coordinator, back. And she operated in the lead role in that position, where they did the quality control. Main job of that position is plan checks with development, quality control, assigning and checking work to other technicians, doing water and sewer studies, and a little bit of in-house modeling. We basically implemented and run our own water and sewer models, and they're GIS-based models, so computer-based models on how the water and the sewer system flows. So the 2 modelers I have were the supervisor and the lead, and they're both no longer here. So bringing Eileen back out of retirement would be ideal. So with that, there's a couple options, and Bridget Anderson's here from Human Resources to correct me if I mess any of this up. But typically under CalPERS rules, you have to be separated the service for about 180 days. Well, Eileen only retired in basically end of November of last year. So obviously that's not the 180 days, but due to the uniqueness of her experience here at the district and our needs with the supervisor leaving, the board could make an action to allow her to come back, which allows her to come back without sacrificing her retirement. It's subject to a lot of different rules. There's no benefits for her. She would be also only allowed 960 hours in a fiscal year, which is July 1st to June 30th. I think those are mainly the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Bridget, if I got anything wrong, please correct me.
Yeah, so what we'll be taking to the board is getting the board's approval, which is required by CalPERS. So CalPERS is the agency that helps us, that pays our retirement. So we give money to CalPERS, and then when people retire from here, CalPERS writes them basically their retirement checks. And CalPERS is the ones that sets these rules that says somebody has to be gone for at least 180 days before you could bring them back. And then there's an exception under there, except if there's a set of circumstances that exist that would require you to bring that person back before 180 days. In this situation that James just described easily fits that exception rules. But we do have to get board approval before basically to protect Eileen, to make sure her retirement is intact. So that's the item that'll be going in front of the board. And I just thought it'd be important for James to have an opportunity to explain to both of you, since otherwise you'll have no background and no context why this item is in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and James started to maybe turn it over to Bridget. I don't know if Bridget has anything she wants to add. I was going to introduce Bridget when we get to the second part of personnel, but Bridget, feel free to speak up now if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think that kind of the main things is, the rules came into place in 2013 with pension reform. And so that's kind of where all of these rules and regulations from CalPERS comes from. And as Glenn said, it does protect Eileen as a retiree, but it protects the district as well to make sure that we are following those rules so that we don't then have to pay CalPERS any later fees. And we've checked with CalPERS and done all of our due diligence on that to make sure all those rules are being followed.
And we would only be bringing Eileen back for a limited time while we're filling, Rob is the one, her supervisor who left. So after we get Rob on board and finish maybe all the musical chairs that may happen after people leave an organization, this is not a forever use of Eileen. It's just an interim, kind of a stopgap measure.
Yeah,
She would understand that, right? She knows. Well, I guess I should ask, have you spoken with her about this? Is she on board?
yes. So we spoke to her about it, and she had to do. We had to do the research on the CalPERS side, but she had to do her own research on the Social Security side because Social Security, which she's collecting, has a different set of rules. So she's not going to even take advantage of the 960 hours by the end of the fiscal year. She's going to be working 18 hours a week, 3 days a week, 6 hours a day, if it were to get approved. And then basically to the end of the fiscal year. At that point, it'll give us an opportunity because we're in the middle of recruitment for a new technician to fill one of the vacancies. It'd give a great opportunity since she is a trainer in that department to train a new staff. And then once we get a new supervisor on board, which would be towards the end of the fiscal year, I'd imagine, it gives some opportunity because even the supervisor, higher level position, she'll have the knowledge base of our policies and procedures, which that new supervisor won't because there's not an internal candidate that's qualified for that currently.
And this is actually ends up being a cost savings because although it costs money to bring Eileen back, we're saving all the money that we're not spending on Rob while he's here. So it's actually not that we're looking forward to the savings. I'd rather have the people, but so there's really no out-of-pocket money on this. But like I said, the reason it's going to the board is because it's a CalPERS requirement if you get the board approval on this item.
I mean, it sounds like she has been a great employee for the district and the expertise is badly needed. And as long as, she's done her research and we've done our research and we can make sure that we're protecting her retirement. I know she was featured in the retirement video that was shown. And that was such a great video. It was very touching. It sounds like it's a no-brainer from my perspective. And if we could keep her and have her overlap, like you suggested, Mr. Gumpel, just a little bit with the new person, that would really be helpful. So is there provision for that she can stay?
Yeah, so our goal is, and we've kind of outlined the timeline and working directly with human resources, is we already started the recruitment before we even knew Rob was moving to another position for replacement of the technician. So Bridget and I, human resources and I have been working on getting interviews scheduled sometime in February or maybe even by the end of this month, probably early February. And she'd be coming on board theoretically as early as January 25th if the board approves it. So she'd be available to interview the future technician and then getting that person on board and also starting to train with that. And then on the heels of that, we plan on going to advertise for replacement of the supervisor position in early February, which would ideally bring somebody on board hopefully by the beginning of June, if it's an outside candidate to go through our process.
Yeah,
So
having Eileen's expertise on the selection panel will be of great value to us. And nobody better to determine what we need than somebody who's served in that capacity or supervised the people in that capacity.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
So that's that item, and I think this committee would be good on those types of items for all three: the public awareness, the personnel, and the policy. If there's something that'll be coming forward to a board that requires an action, we'll almost always run that by the committee first to see if the committee has any insight, kind of maybe something we didn't think about, or at a minimum, just to make sure that you guys have a better understanding because you're both new. So I think this is helpful for you to get a little background, and maybe the item at the board will go a little bit smoother because of the background.
Yeah, I know. I agree with everything that's been said. You already answered my question. There is no internal candidate that's qualified. And hopefully that's where we kind of look first before we, put this Band-Aid on something. But it sounds like you already answered that. There is no internal candidate. Hopefully we promote within. And that's where our first glance, our look is. And then not, okay, nobody qualified. We'll bring her back. We'll have them train the outside candidate through recruitment, and she'll be there to overlap, and it'll be a smooth transition. I mean, I don't see a problem at all.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah.
It does sound,
That's what I want. So.
Mr. Gompel, it does sound like you are staring down sort of a difficult situation, though, with with so many of your folks retiring.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. It started, Director Boyd Hodgins, it started a few, but this is my second time. I've been at the district for about 15 years. So I had a group of about 7 or 8 retire, gosh, maybe 7, 8 years ago, right on the heels of the recession. And so we went through a kind of a restructuring at that point. And so this will be another opportunity, I call it. It keeps things interesting. And as you were mentioning before, it gave us an opportunity. We developed a development services manual, a GIS manual, a policies and procedures manual for engineering. And not, so it kind of, some of the things that you were talking about, we definitely went through our kind of growing pains within our group.
So not just James' group, but as retirements occur going forward, we always try to find creative ways to manage the short term, right, with the vacancy before you fill the position, and see if there's an opportunity to maybe do things differently in the future. Not all of those items go in front of the board. In fact, very few of them do. Doesn't mean they can't be taken in front of the committee, just to give you an idea of what we're facing and what our proposal is to do about it. This one in particular is a mandate that it goes to the board. If there were items that resulted in either new positions or increases in salary or changes in their job descriptions and the salary structure, those would all require board approval, and those we would definitely take in front of the committee. If I had the authority as the general manager to work within the authority already given to me, it wouldn't need to go to the board. But if the committee would like to be made aware of those things, we can certainly inform you on what's happening with the changing personnel landscape.
I don't feel like I need to be involved in hiring and firing and recruiting,
Yeah,
but I
good.
think,
Yeah.
just having a periodic update about how we're tracking with, general expertise within the district. I think that's important because we've got people that have put in a lot of years, and that, that's a source of pride. And I think that if we start seeing a lot of departures, then maybe that's something that we need to look at, because we want people to stay. We want people to stay. We don't want to lose their knowledge base. It's expensive. It's a safety issue. And I think, just periodic updates would be, I would welcome that, just to know what's going on.
Yeah. Fortunately, Vallecitos does not have a big problem with retention. The single biggest reason people leave is they retire. Occasionally you'll get somebody that leaves because it's usually a promotion. Sometimes people leave because the commute got too tough, right? They live up in Temecula and they found out the Rancho California Water District up there has an opening, same position that they do down here. And it's a lifestyle decision. Very rarely do people leave because they're unhappy here. So it's good. And we want to protect that reputation, right? It helps to retain people, and it helps us to recruit when we do need to get new people on board.
So what are the next steps then regarding this action item that'll come before the board?
For this action item, there'll be an agendized item. It'll be on the action. So, the board has consent calendar items and then action items. This will be on an action item. So you'll get there'll be a staff report in the board packet that will be posted tomorrow. So you can read that beforehand. Staff will make a presentation at the board meeting on Wednesday and leave you with our recommendation. And then we'll be looking for the board to support that recommendation. And then once we get that, we'll coordinate with CalPERS. Staff will coordinate with CalPERS, showing that the board approval. I think the board has to adopt a resolution. Is that right, Bridget? It looks
That's
like
correct.
James. Okay, so the board. will
Even though
be-
it's just a temporary resolution? I mean, this
Yeah,
is
well,
just,
it's a resolution allowing the exemption to the 180-day rule. So even
and
if
this isn't going forward for everybody. This is kind of a one time.
it's just for
Mhm.
Eileen, it's just for Eileen,
Okay.
for this set of circumstances, whether it was for 1 day of work or whether she's going to be here for 6 months of work, you have to approve the exemption
Right.
that CalPERS provides. So, and that's it. So it'll be a relatively quick item, quick staff report. I don't sense any controversy about the item. It's not like we're adding staffing levels. We're just trying to temporarily fill a gap that's been created through departures.
Sounds good. And James, congratulations. I mean, 15 years, 9 retired, only 2 left. That's a pretty good track record.
Yeah.
People
Yeah,
like you.
I-
People like you.
I think they only like him for 8 years, though, it sounds like. That's what I got out of the story. 8 years, 3 days, and then,
Is that what it is?
I'm a glass half full type of guy, Glenn.
there you go. There you go.
Thank you, Director Panic. I really appreciate that.
All right, that's all we had on that particular item. And if you guys are okay, James, you could probably
Yep.
depart if you like. And Bridget, if you can stay on for a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time.
Okay, so the other part is just the general personnel. What does the P3 committee do with personnel? So in my 4 years, so Bridget Anderson, have you guys had a chance? Bridget, do you have a camera or no?
I do. Sorry, I should have turned that on already.
Okay, so there's Bridget. So hello, Bridget. Hello.
Hello, Bridget.
Nice to
Thank
see you,
you.
Director Panic.
Thank you for all your help.
Yeah, so I think you guys have probably already dealt with Bridget when you're coming on board with doing all your paperwork and stuff. And Bridget is our wizard with all things HR, and we've been keeping her very busy with recruitments in the last year or so. So I asked her to be here just to kind of cover any questions you may have. The committee has not been that active on personnel issues, with the exception of when we did the latest MOU, which is our basically labor agreement with our staff. So at that point in time, we started to bring a lot of issues forward to 2 committees. We brought it to the P3 committee to talk about the personnel side of things. We also brought items forward to the finance committee because the negotiations had financial impacts, right? So those 2 committees were fairly active in dealing with personnel issues as we headed to having the board approve the memorandum of understanding with the employees. So we don't have a formal union, and maybe Bridget, you can talk about our labor relationship with the employees, so I don't speak out of turn here.
Yeah, not a problem. So we do have the Vallecitos Water District Employee Association, and it functions as a union. The main difference is that they aren't backed by a national group such as Teamsters or SEIU, but they are structured. They have their rules and regulations, and they are our contact in our the president is our contact for any kind of negotiations or employee issues that have to go through the association.
Did you say they are or are not backed by national unions?
They are not.
Okay. And who is the employee association president, and how often does that person turn over?
That is Ingrid Stichter. That is an elected position. I think she's held it now for 2 years, maybe 3.
Nobody wants to be the president.
Nobody wants to be president. And
Job, I bet.
yeah. So I think they normally hold elections every December, and I think they were put on hold this year because of COVID.
And Bridget, we have a vice president too, so maybe you can mention who.
Yep. So Dean Toth from the operations side, the association does try to have the president and the vice president, one from admin, which is Ingrid, and then one from operations, which in this case is Dean.
Okay, thank
And
you.
this
I mean, is
year,
there association dues and everything they pay? I mean, what's the purpose of the union or the
Yep.
sub-union?
Yep, members do pay if they choose. They can, I don't remember what the dues are now, but they can pay into it, and those funds go to employee events, like the association may host their Christmas party for members, something like that. The main purpose for dues is for their representation, legal representation or negotiation representation during contract negotiation.
How often does that come around? Is it?
Used to be on average every 3 years. The current MOU is 4. So I think we won't be going into that until 2023.
I mean, good relationship. Has there been any issues? Negative?
Not in the time I've been here. I know before 2012, there were some contentious times, but that seems to have all smoothed over. For the
Yeah.
most part, I think we do okay.
So
Maybe it has
over,
to do. Go ahead.
over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of changes that haven't always been employee friendly. So for example, when you deal with PERS, each employee, they have a share of their retirement. They have to pay 8% of their salary to PERS. And then the district picks up a certain percentage, and that percentage varies, and it's complicated why, but that's usually about twice as big as the employee share. In the old days, the district actually picked up the employee share as well as the employer's share. So the employee didn't pay anything. But with pension reform and agencies trying to manage their costs over time usually through the MOU negotiation process, they required the employees to pick up the employee share. So that was clearly an area where there was some labor unrest. But fortunately, it wasn't just Vallecitos. Almost every district and every city was going through this process of no longer picking up the employee share if that agency had picked up the employee share. Similar with the Social Security costs. Vallecitos is kind of unique. Most agencies don't participate in PERS and Social Security. We do. So our employees have to, currently they pay 8% towards PERS, and then they pay whatever percent towards Social Security. Years ago, the district used to pick up the employees' Social Security costs too. So over time, the district is picking up less of the employees' retirement related costs. And clearly the employees fought for maybe higher wages or different, maybe more vacation time or something in exchange for that money that they were losing out on. Most of those reforms, I'd say, are done. So we're now at the point where the employees are picking up 100% of what they should be picking up. So I think the labor issues are a little bit different now. They're not as contentious. They're smaller in nature. You know, everywhere I've worked, one of the biggest issues is the boot allowance. How much money do people get for boots, and how much should a pair of boots cost? And if that's the biggest problem you have with your labor group, then that's a good problem.
Good. Well, this coincides with your coming on board, so thank you, General Manager Pruitt, for your leadership there, because I know
Yeah, I can't take credit for a lot of that. A lot of that was done before. Some of it was done by the board before. Some of it was mandated by PEPRA, which is the Public Employees Pension Reform Act. But regardless of how it came to be, it created, it moved people's cheese, let's put it that way. And people were a little upset. But I think those have died down a little bit. But in my experience, if there's only small problems, then the small problems seem big, right? Everyone takes the biggest problem they have and they focus on that. So, Bridget, feel free to pipe in, but I don't see any huge labor issues going forward.
I agree.
So I think it is 23 that our current MOU extends to. We'll probably start about a year before then, meeting as a management group and meeting with the board and start talking about what issues we think are reasonable. And the association will do the same thing. And then we'll start getting together and sharing proposals back and forth. It's not fun.
What percentage of the employees participate in the union? Is it almost 100?
It's almost 100. I think all but 11 employees are part of the association. And I think only a handful of those don't pay dues. They're still technically members, but they're not contributing members.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bridget, can you remind me, if they choose not to pay dues, don't they have to divert that same amount of money to something else?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, they have to make like a charitable contribution or something. The fundamental reason was people didn't want it to be just about money. So obviously people would not want to be in the union because if they thought it could save them money, because they'd still benefit from the overall negotiations. And there was an unfairness, right? I paid my dues, but you got a free ride. So at least if the people say, hey, you're out that money regardless, whether it goes to the union or somewhere else, it at least takes that financial aspect of dues payment away.
Nice.
It's a very small amount. I mean, some people talk about union dues as being very big, but Bridget, can you even come close to an estimate of what it is on a weekly basis or bi-weekly?
I think actually it might be $12 a month.
Yeah, so this is not the hundreds or $1,000 a year type of thing that you hear about with the big Teamsters and those types of unions.
Okay, $150 a year and they're in. Okay, gotcha.
It's in that range, yeah. So again, we don't take a lot of items to this committee because there aren't a lot of items to discuss. Something like what James just talked about is a good example of when we would do that. And I can foresee in the next year, there's probably gonna be a few more issues like that, where we're gonna have to be a little creative on the short term. And we certainly don't want to do something on a short term and end up having that person stay forever. That's not the intent. It's kind of been my goal ever since I got here to get our staffing levels as low as they can be, but still be able to provide top quality services. And I'm really happy with the employee count we have now. And I think we're at like 109 people, Bridget, is that about right?
Yep, 109 people. And then I think active, we have 104 right now.
Yeah, so, and remember, we're not just a water district, we provide wastewater services, we do recycled water, so it's kind of like we're 3 districts in one. So sometimes people want to compare how many employees does Vallecitos have with Vista Irrigation. Well, Vista Irrigation District doesn't do recycled water, they don't do sewer. You know, there's things that they don't do that we do. So we're happy to share any of those comparisons that we may have, but I'm really comfortable with our staffing levels, and I think we've done a good job at trying to keep them as low as possible.
Okay, good. So, this is the third segment where you've said, well, you haven't really done very much. And,
It's been a very, very lightly used committee.
well, so I'm planning to change that because
Message received.
that's I don't feel that that's a good use of my talents or my time, and I'm sure Director Pennick has ideas too. So, so some of the things that I'm thinking about that I would like to learn more about, and these are not really, they're kind of random, but so first of all, I'd like to know, does our application for employment, does it list male, female, and other as options, or is it just male and female? I'd like to know the answer to that.
I think the current one is male, female, and declined to state.
Declined to
And
state.
that's the voluntary form
Mhm.
that is confidential. Employee or candidates do not have to fill it out, and it's seen only by HR.
Okay. I'd like to think about a way to make that language a little bit more inclusive. And that seems like an easy fix. It seems like something that people should be supportive of. I'm not sure if that needs to go to the full board for a vote, but that's something that I think is a very small change that I think would be really helpful in making people feel welcome if they don't fit either of those categories. So that's one thing that I'd like to hear more about and figure out a pathway forward to talk about that and do that. I've got some questions about workplace safety protocols. I hope that we never find ourselves, when we're all back together, in a situation where we have a concern about violence in the workplace. But I would like to have a better understanding of, what kind of training is offered to employees, what kind of mental health counseling is offered to employees, what kind of protocols are in place to help employees navigate, God forbid, any kind of situation like that. So that's something I'm interested in. I'd like to learn about harassment training. I know when we came on board, we were given the harassment sheet, and I'd like to better understand, what kind of periodic training. And some videos are really good, some videos are really hard to get through, but I think that that's something that protects our liability. I will also suggest that board members go through it as well as the workplace violence, because that can happen at any time. It can happen during a meeting. And so, these are the things that I'm sort of thinking about as ways that we can expand the committee or at least talk through. I would like to include our board in some kind of portal. And this maybe is a discussion for IT, but so that we can have access to documents and access to history, that's easily accessible, so we don't have to go in through all the links that the public has to find. And I've also asked several times about an email address. So I would like to get that going and put that in place. I think it looks professional. And I think that it is in keeping with President Sinella's idea of elevating Vallecitos. And I think that that starts with some culture changes. So, the board of directors, we have Vallecitos email addresses so that if our constituents want to contact us, they're not, I'm not giving Gmail address out to whomever.
Yeah, so
So
to that
I
point,
think-
if I can interrupt, we did just today, I got the response from General Counsel Gilpin regarding board members having email addresses. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I just saw it pop
Okay.
up. So
Okay.
we asked them that specific question, is it allowable? So board members in the past had wanted to use their personal one, and that's fine too. But yeah, we got your email and we've been processing it with Best and Creek here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I would like to have business cards printed and I would like to have an email address on there, and I don't want everybody in my district having my email address. Some of you may know, I've been like harassed, and I've had threats put at me, and I don't want to give out my personal email address. So
Understood.
I think it's a small ask. I'm not sure what the legal ramifications would be, but other places that I have, when I was on the school board, I had a school board address, and that's how the constituents contacted me. So I would really like to see that happen, and sooner rather than later, so that we can start communicating with the folks and elevating Vallecitos.
Okay. If I can quickly respond to some of the other things you brought up, mostly about the training, I would suggest maybe at our next meeting, and we're going to probably talk about meeting frequency, one of our next items here, but maybe at our next meeting, we can give you an update as to what required annual or biannual training is required for both staff members and board members.
Okay.
And most of that's driven out by regulations. We're really good at following regulations. That doesn't mean there isn't more training we can give that isn't required. There may be things that we think we should be training people on, even though there's no state or federal agency that's requiring that training to be done. But as a starting point, I think if we can educate both of our committee members as to what we currently do, that would be a good start, a good jumping off point.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, are there any more issues for Bridget on personnel stuff? Otherwise, we can probably excuse her and then we can go through the rest of the agenda if that works.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks,
Thank
Bridget.
you.
Nice to see you again.
You
Thank
too.
you.
I hope to meet you both in person someday.
Hopefully
One of these
soon.
days.
Yeah. All right, bye-bye. Okay, where do you want to go now?
Well, I think I've learned so much, and I think that I've also sort of set the expectation of how I would like for this committee to run, and it seems like it's kind of a low bar because the committee didn't do very much in the past. But I don't want to invest a lot of time and not get stuff done. I mean, that's why I ran for this office. Director Penna can speak for himself, but I would like to be very involved, and that means that we will meet fairly frequently. And it's a big committee. I get it. It's kind of like a catch-all, like the sort of the kitchen sink committee. But I think that we can do a lot of really good and important work. So my question is, how do we do the work? How do we do it in bite-sized chunks? Because the people that we need to advise us on staff, they don't have hours and hours and hours to give to this committee frequently, and I don't either. But I think maybe we can break it up and maybe attack 2 of the 3 of these categories each time we meet. That's an item for discussion. I don't know exactly how to do it, but maybe that's where we start. I don't know. What are people's thoughts?
I'll let Director Pennick opine before I jump in.
No, and I think you're right on board, Director Boyd Hodgins. One biggest thing in any relationship, I think, is expectations and communication. So you have set the expectations, and now communication, realizing that, like you mentioned, it to some it might not seem like a big deal. To some, it's a big elephant. There's a lot there, and like with anything, just one bite at a time. So we don't have to solve all the problems. In fact, what's nice is by listening, there's not a lot of problems. I mean, things have been going really well. So I'm one, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it's running well, keep it going. And yes, we can fine tune and maybe make things a little bit more efficient here and there. But from what I've viewed thus far, I mean, the employees are happy. General Manager Kroom's just running a really tight ship. Things are going really well. And so that's why my first month or my first quarter even is just listening. I love listening to you. I love listening to, General Manager Kroom. I love listening to the employees, finding out what their concerns are, what they want changed, and just facilitate that. So I don't want to reinvent anything. I just want to listen, and then maybe tweak or help or facilitate where needed. And like, I don't have a lot of time. I have enough to participate and help, but I don't, like you, I don't want to spend 2, 3, 4 hours talking without any action. I am one, if we talk about it, put some action items down, let's do. I mean, as simple as like your emails. Okay. I saw, General Manager Kroom writing down, okay, let's get the email changed. Just little tweaks like that are fine. And those action items, and then follow up is really important. So let's do a few tiny little things, do it, and then follow up. It's been done, and then do the next one, just little by little. You don't have to change anything because there's not a lot that needs to be changed. Things are going really well. I'm truly impressed with the way it's being run thus far.
It's a great organization. I'm blessed with the people I have. So, best professional move I ever made was to come here. So of the 3 Ps that we talked about today, I think the policy one is probably the one that's easier to get our hands around, maybe more work than the others, but I think there's a clearer direction of what we're trying to accomplish. I think with the personnel and the public awareness, it's a little squishier, but I think over time, as we talk about it, you guys, the committee can give us ideas and say, hey, did you think about this? And I think as we start to educate the committee, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but as we start to inform you of the things that we already do, you can help us identify maybe some blind spots, because everybody develops a blind spot. Here's what we do for public awareness. Director Boyd Hodgson, you're very tech savvy. You like social media and those types of things, and that's not my strength. Director Sinella is big on that, and Director Pennick, I don't know where you fall on the scale, but
well, there's my phone in the background, tells you how tech
there you
savvy.
go. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But, just as an example for public awareness, it's nice to try to break it down into all these different ways to communicate today, and then we got to figure out with the existing or current resources that we have, how do we best do that? Or do we need more resources? Or do we need to contract more? There's different ways to do these things, but it all starts with identifying what you want to do, and then you can figure out how to do it. So, like I said, the public awareness and the personnel will be a little more ambiguous, a little less well-defined than the policy issue will be. So maybe for our next meeting, I would suggest that maybe we can try to get some information on a little bit more information on the personnel, like the training things, a little bit more information on the public awareness, and maybe spend a lot of time on the policy and try to tell you where we're at and let you know where we think we need to go next. So, and maybe that's a good segue into the meeting frequency and meeting. I know it says next meeting date on the agenda, but it's probably broader than that. Is the committee envisioning a monthly meeting for this?
So I think if we break it down and sort of tackle 2 of the 3 things, I would like to try to meet twice a month. And I know that seems like a lot, but we have a large mandate. I'm not going to go over my 10 meetings, given the committee assignments. So I can do that. Director Pennick, you'll have to sort of figure that out, given your committee assignments as well. But I would like to meet twice a month, most months, because I think that's a way to get work done, and we don't have to talk about the same thing every time. But
Yeah.
Again, I don't like meetings that last longer than an hour and a half. It's too much. People lose interest. They start checking their phone, and I'd like to just do the work of the meeting, and then we can we can plan socializing time another time. So that's my vision for how this would work, and I think if we can just carve out time, and I'm pretty flexible. I do have a job, but it's pretty flexible during the day. I can make my own hours generally.
I can tell you that's going to be a lot from a staff perspective. The most active committee we have is the finance committee, and they meet once per month.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually have a lot on their agenda. So I want to be careful that we don't set up an expectation that's going to start becoming a huge burden to staff because you get, the two of you, you'll attend a meeting, but behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of preparation for each meeting. And every hour that we spend preparing for this meeting is an hour we're not doing something else.
Mhm.
So I want to be mindful of that. Nobody likes to meet just to meet. So I want to be careful that we don't commit to something that ends up being counterproductive.
Absolutely. I don't think we should meet if we don't have anything to talk about. I think generally that's a good policy. But I would like to make progress. And I know going from, we didn't really do a whole lot in this committee before, to all of the things that I'm talking about is a big change. And sometimes that's hard. But I think that if we start strong, then we can get a lot done. And if there's nothing to talk about, then there's nothing to talk about, and there's no reason to meet. But that's what I would like to see. I'd like to aim for. And, just all of the things that I learned about today, I would like to find out more about. I would like to, and I had some ideas that I contributed as well. I'd like to talk with the staff and find out if that's feasible, if it's a good idea, if they think that it would be valuable. And then, comes the part of, well, let's make a plan. Let's make a strategic plan to do all of the outreach that we want to do. Let's make a strategic plan of, this, that, and the other. So I think that there is more than enough work to do. I don't want to make work that's just busy work. I want to make work that that elevates the district, and that helps things run more smoothly and improves the district.
Okay, I'm certainly going to look to the two of you to help prepare the agendas then, because as I said, from going from a committee that rarely met, maybe once or twice a year, to going to 24 times a year.
Well, okay, so let me just get this straight.
It's a huge jump.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Okay, I have to call this out because, so you all of you know, I have the fewest committee assignments. And then I got put on a committee that meets once or twice a year. Come on.
I didn't notice that, Tiffany. So
okay, well, I did, and I'm writing it down right now.
So my 2 cents is twice a month does seem like a lot. I mean, once a month in the beginning sounds reasonable. And a way to, can we, and I don't know the round rules or committee rules or whether, if there is something that we need to talk about, I mean, can we not communicate via email to those that, I mean, seems like we can get a lot done now via email, phone calls or whatever, and not call a formal meeting. Is that, I don't know, legal? Is that kosher? Or is that a way to go if we wanted to just chat about something without having a formal committee meeting?
Is that the where we run into the Brown Act?
And that's what my concern.
I don't know that it would necessarily be a Brown Act violation. I'll go back to kind of the opening comments I said, is that the committees are an advisory group. So there's not a lot of power in the committee to direct a lot of things, particularly if they result in large expenditures of money or resource allocations. So I think it's advisable to have some kind of I hate to say strategic planning sessions, because I'm not talking about mission, vision, and values and all that, but what is it we want to do? And then depending on what it is we're trying to accomplish, I may need to take something to the board to say, hey, this is a significant commitment of resources that we hadn't budgeted for. So the board can weigh in and say, is it worth committing those levels of resources? So, and I'm just saying that's how the committees have normally functioned. When you look at the most heavily used committee, the finance committee, mostly they're just a sounding board, and we use them as we are processing budget stuff. So it's work we're doing anyway. We're preparing a budget it's mandated that we have to prepare a budget. The board understands that. And going through the committee helps us maybe get a better insight as to what the board is going to want to see when we take it forward. So it's not newly created work, so to speak, but some of the things we're talking about here are new things. And I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm not judging. It's just, I just know it's going to be work. So the board at some point in time, if I'm going to be devoting extra resources or asking for additional money for part-time work to do the stuff that has to be done because we're busy working on committees, we'd have to figure that out. I don't know that we're there yet. I think that take the policy manual, the admin code, whatever you want to call it. I think that's something we could do in-house with existing staff and still be able to manage our workload. It'll be a stretch, but I think we can get it done. Some of the other things, depending where we go with them, I don't know if I could say the same thing. I do know from experience that the time it takes to prepare for committee meetings is a lot. You look at the number of people that were on the meeting today, the number of staff, not that they would all be there at every meeting, but that's a lot of labor. And they were doing things, and Chris had clearly done some work to summarize what we had done. And so I don't know how many hours each of them put in, probably not a lot, but collectively it was considerable. So we certainly have to be mindful of how many people are involved in each topic. So if we want to maybe narrow the focus on each meeting to have the fewest number of people in attendance, that would be good. Because, poor Bridget, she had to stick around for the whole meeting to get to her little segment at the end. So
Yeah, that's not a good use of folks' time. And I'm definitely want to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
But I'll reiterate, I think I'm pushing for a culture change. And I get it, what was done in the past, but I would like to do new things. So I think we can find a compromise. I think we can find a happy medium. And we can conduct some things by email, that's fine. But having the updates is valuable, but making sure that the appropriate people are in the meeting so that they can spend their time doing what they're supposed to be doing outside of the committee prep and the committee, sitting through the meeting. I think that's important. And I do want to be respectful of that. But at the same time, I'm really excited about this committee. I'm excited about all the ideas I have. And I want to get moving. And
a compromise would be good. Maybe you want to start with once a month instead of twice a month? That seems like a fair compromise.
Well, let's say if we do it once a month and we do policy, it means that, if we're going to just tackle one sort of topic per to reduce the amount of staff, that means that we're only meeting about policy twice in 6 months, right?
Or once a quarter. We can meet once a quarter with each focus group, which seems fair. If this has been meeting in the past twice a year, you said, Glenn.
Yeah,
I don't think that's what we want to model. That's not.
We don't want to model, but we do want to compromise. And like you said, just the amount of time that was spent. I mean, Diane's still on the call, so I think twice a month is overkill, to be honest. So I think we can start with once a month possibly, and like you said, if there's nothing to discuss, we can either cancel the meeting or hey, we're just going to focus on this one thing, and that way we only need 2 people on the line from staff instead of 6. Yeah. But I think I understand I do understand your culture change and things like that. But it's hard to come in day one and do that. I think we need to listen first to see what just to come on board. And I think would be respected a little bit more by saying, hey, we're going to change this in January. Well, let's listen in January, February, March, and then let's maybe in April. Maybe we do change it to twice a month if we're saying, hey, you know what, Tiffany's got some great ideas and we want to roll. This is going to require some time because we have some really good ideas that will, better the district. But I think coming in right away and going from 2 or 3 meetings a year to 24 is crazy. Is not crazy, but it's a lot. So it is a little crazy. But
okay.
Going to once a month seems realistic and a very good compromise and a good use of staff's time and energy.
And
that's my 2 cents. What's that?
I was going to say, Director Boyd Hodgson, I didn't mean to indicate that I thought we had to have only one topic per meeting. We can talk about several, and I would just look for some latitude on making sure that we have little breaks so that I can invite people to say, hey, be on standby. We're going to cover public awareness first, and then sometime in the meeting, we're going to call you and get you in for a personnel item.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Multiple items.
Yeah.
Today
Sure.
I did it because I wanted you to meet the players, right? That's an important thing, putting that face to the name. But it wouldn't necessarily be like that in future ones. And I don't want you to think I'm saying it can only be one topic per meeting. That's not what I wanted to leave you thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. And I absolutely think, having the latitude where people come and go, I wish all meetings were like that. So I think that's reasonable. Okay. Let's do once a month.
Okay. And is there a day of the week and a time and which Monday or which Friday, is there, what works best for you to schedule the monthly meetings?
And just so that I'm clear, we report out sort of a top level, what we talk about in the board meeting. So it would be helpful for me if we meet sort of close to when we're having a board meeting. That way I don't forget what has transpired. Like if we meet the Thursday after the board meeting, it's going to be hard for me to.
That's almost 2 weeks before the next one, right?
So that's my only input. I'm pretty flexible though.
So maybe like the Monday or Tuesday of the board meeting weeks. So it'll be kind of fresh in your mind.
Not the third week. Maybe the first week is better. The Monday or the Tuesday of, and I prefer days. I don't know how that works for you, Director Pennick, but I prefer days rather than evenings.
I mean, post-COVID, is this a meeting that we do in person, or is it still an option to go virtual? Or
Yeah, in a non-COVID world, we physically got together. Doesn't mean we have to, but that's how we historically have done things.
gotcha. And I'm flexible, to be honest, as long as I'm not giving blood and I can drive around every once in a while. No,
Yeah.
I'm pretty flexible. During the day is good for me as well. Actually, I prefer daytime as well instead of after 4 or 5 o'clock when it's family time.
So I heard Director Boyd Hodgson say maybe the Monday or Tuesday before the first meeting of the month. Is that
I
what you're
think
thinking?
that works pretty well for me.
Okay, mornings are better. Should we block out 2 hours and hopefully not need 2 hours? Or should I?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Okay, we'll set something up here. Unrelated topic, but just since I have both of you, I've typically offered with each, excuse me, with each of the directors to meet on a monthly basis, just for a one-on-one breakfast, lunch, whatever you want to do, or just a phone call. So I'll extend that to you if you want to take me up on it. I found it to be very, very helpful. It's really helped us form one-on-one relationships. So I'll reach out to you via email and see if you want to take. I don't need a response right now. I'll reach out via email, and if you want to do it, we'll figure out if lunch or breakfast works better, what day of the week, what time of day, all that stuff. And I always try to put meetings so that there's not multiple meetings on the same day. So I'm not going to have a lunch, a committee meeting, and a board meeting on the same day. I will spread that out unless you want to have it all on the same day. But just so you know, you only get paid for a day's worth of meetings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank
Take from
you.
that what you will, but
Thank you.
like I said, I think if you ask the other 3 directors, they would say it's very valuable, the time we get to spend one-on-one. It gives you an ability to bounce ideas off me or ask me questions that you may not be comfortable asking at a board meeting. You can talk about the agenda. We can talk about your fishing trip, whatever you want to talk about. I think the personal relationship is huge. And that's one of the things I try to stress with my employees, that it's all about relationships. Everything we do is about relationships. So.
Amen. I agree. Especially after that poem you wrote about Hal. You had a good relationship. So yes.
Yeah, no, it's it was tough to see him go, and I know it'll be tough when all of them leave. But so,
thank you for that. No, I'll look forward to the email. I would like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would too.
Good.
I would too.
All right. So what else? Is there anything else we need to talk about?
I don't think so. Not from my end. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for pulling all the people together. Thanks, Diane, for hanging in there. Really appreciate you being here. And nice to see you, Director Pennick.
Nice to see you. One of these days we'll meet in person, I hope.
I know.
Isn't it odd that you're both on the same board and you haven't even had a chance?
We
to
haven't
sit
met.
down and
I
have
don't
a
know.
cup of coffee?
Maybe we'll have to plan to meet somewhere like at Ralph's or Albertsons. I don't know. Formally.
Yeah, impromptu meeting at a grocery store.
Yep.
All right. Well, I got to go
Thank
decipher
you.
all of the notes I wrote down here.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
Diane.
Thank
Take
you
care,
all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.